Welcome to the Blue Ocean. Welcome to the Blue Ocean Solutions podcast, where we dive into real conversations with business owners, innovators, and industry leaders reshaping the future of clean tech, construction, and the renewable energy sectors. I'm Kreel Hutchinson, your host. Our guest today is Brian Carmody, the Director of Finance and Development at ReNew Developers in the Greater Boston area. In this episode, we discuss his groundbreaking work in building sustainable data centers that not only power the future, but also feed communities. If you're a renewable energy investor, a sustainability-focused tech executive, or a community leader interested in innovative infrastructure, you will love this show because Brian's redefining how data centers can be both powerful and profoundly impactful for the planet and people. It's an example of how visionary thinking can transform industry challenges into opportunities for a better world. I'm super excited to welcome Brian to the podcast.
Psyched to be here, Kreel. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, I'm really excited. This topic obviously is a big topic right now with the explosion of AI and humanity's requirement for data centers and a lot more energy on all fronts. So why don't you introduce yourself to my audience, explain a little bit about your background and how you came to this role and the current company that you're working with?
Sure. So I'll start with my background and arrive at where I'm at right now. So let's say in the mid 90s, I was an Army officer on active duty, did that for 4 years. And then from there went to work for Pfizer. And from there went into distribution. And from there, got a chance to have an equity stake in a manufacturing company. And I ran that as president for 10 years. And then a few years ago, partnered up with a friend of mine who's been in real estate development for since the 90s, really. And he's just really been exploding and growing the data center and power industry. So he asked me to come on board and stay with him and do some more work with him. So, and I asked him, hey, if you're looking for more work, I'd love to get deeper into this because we were having so much fun just on the periphery of me helping a little bit here and there. But it was just kind of a match, a mutual attraction, so to speak, to work together. And we've had a great time for the last 3 years or so.
Great. So tell us a little bit about that current business. What do you guys do?
Sure. So ReNew Developers is a real estate development company focused on on-site power generation. So, you probably hear me talk, both of us will use the word, the phrase data centers a lot in this conversation, but really what we are at the core is a power developer. So we find land and acquire it and clean it up environmentally and whatever else needs to happen to create a piece of property where we have the right to generate power on its own. And then the off-taker is typically right now, because there's such demand for it, typically the off-taker is a data center, but there's no rule that we're not locked into that. It could be a manufacturing company or whatever. So, a hospital, a biotech company, something like that. But, with data centers in the headlines because of the AI explosion and everything, it just makes sense that we're trying to do that. So the AI explosion, right, it's coming across the country like a tidal wave. And what we're basically trying to do as ReNew Developers is give it a softer landing as it comes crashing down into every community in the United States. So, because we've seen the headlines, right? And it's, megalithic tech companies coming in with trying to build data centers the size of Manhattan, literally, and place them in, Indiana, Ohio, wherever, Virginia, Texas. But, those guys, I mean, when you're building something that big, it's almost like it's hard to not disrupt communities in some way. And in up until now, it has really been one of the major forces of why the electricity prices have spiked throughout the country, because the infrastructure just hasn't been built up and wasn't prepared for an explosion like this. AI, just by its nature, anybody who's even dabbled in it understands that it's an exponential growth type of thing. It doesn't just happen gradually year after year. It literally propels itself every year and doubles and triples in size and more so. So the people who are running the infrastructure of the electrical grids for the past 20, 30 years didn't see this coming. It's not their fault. And now all of a sudden they've got, in order to keep up with the demands that the AI and the broader electrification of the country itself, it's not just data centers, but the broader electrification of the country itself, they just, they're not prepared. So they have to all of a sudden invest billions of dollars, if not trillions, into beefing up the infrastructure to deal with this. So one of the things we do to try to help with that is to bring our own power. When you're working with ReNew developers, you're not pulling off of the grid. We're not a strain to the community. We are creating our own power. Typically, we start with finding land that's on a natural gas pipeline. We start with natural gas. We feed it into a fuel cell, solid oxide fuel cell, or a linear generator, both of which are much cleaner than a diesel generator, which most people have used and are familiar with. Diesel generators are that's where all the emissions come from and the protests and so forth. But when you run natural gas, you're much cleaner. When you run natural gas through a fuel cell or a linear generator, you get even cleaner. And then what we do is we attach carbon capture equipment. So we're capturing all the CO2 molecule emissions and making it even cleaner. So basically, zero emissions in some cases. And then because we're doing that, creating that power ourselves, we're not impacting the local grid. So the local electrical company doesn't have to, invest $1 billion to upgrade transmission sites and everything just because we came to the community. They might have to do it for somebody else, but not for our properties, and not the data centers whom we feed, who are co-located with us. So that's one of the things we do. And then the second thing we do to try to give more to the community than is we figured out that we can put 40-foot container, like think of a 40-foot trailer, right? We can put those container modules on our site co-located with us, and inside you can do a hydroponic farm, a year-round indoor hydroponic farm. So each one of those containers can grow up to 5 metric tons of food per year. And in some of our properties, we can only fit one. In some of our properties, we're planting 9 of them. So that's 45 tons of food, in the communities. What we do with that is we donate that food to the local charities, food shelters, the archdiocese, soup kitchens, homeless shelters, that type of thing, and give to the community to help with the food desert scenario or the food insecurity and scarcity that's out there. And it gives some resiliency to the community, not only for energy but for food. And we donate it in our name and in the tenant's name too.
Brian, when I initially spoke to you, which was, a week ago, I left that conversation feeling optimistic for the first time really around the whole data center conversation because and we'll get into it here, the size of those data centers, because I was just thinking, like you had mentioned, places like Manhattan popping up all over, they have to be absolutely huge. They're just sucking, electricity from the grid. They're going to cost a fortune. Where does this end? And then, you come across my podcast and you're like, oh, actually, you know what? 50% of all those could look this way. And that's an enormous impact, not only generating power that sustains the data center itself, but then a side benefit of actually producing something that's positive for the local community in regards to your food and food donations. So for the audience, can you break down a little bit more of the industry trend around the data centers, the size of them, and what all that math looks like so that your project really can be positioned correctly as a really viable solution here?
Yeah. Oh, that's a great point. Thanks for bringing that up, Kreel. So, right, we did say the ones that are in the headlines, obviously, like everything, are the big, big, big boys, right? So, but 50% of the market, as big as those guys are, the other 50% are under the radar. They're not even being reported on, and they're much smaller. They're in the 5 to 20 megawatt range instead of gigawatt size. And that's where we play, 4 to 20 megawatts. And so that's basically 4 or 5 megawatts is basically a small to medium sized manufacturing company. So what community is ever going to say, oh no, we don't want the manufacturing company to come in because they take too much resources? They just wouldn't do that. So it's not a big draw on, they don't take all the water. We're pretty much self-contained at that size. Same with the electricity, where I already explained that we bring our own power, so to speak. So, there's no impact there. And the buildings themselves, just to give you a feel, they're 10 to 20,000 square feet, sometimes 40,000 square feet. It's not that big. Again, I'll give you even more perspective. 10,000 square feet. We're putting a 10,000 square foot, 4 megawatt data center on an old former used car lot. It's about the size of a Berlin Farms. Got, a 7-Eleven. It's an acre and a half is what this property is. And it was an old blighted property that the mayor of the city said, please, if you can make something go with it, you turn this into something productive so that we can get taxes and make it look better too. I'm all for it. And you can have as many as you want. So that's what we did. I mean, these are the kind of properties that we target. Another one of our properties, which is a little bigger, was an old auto parts junkyard. So we removed 1,000,000 tons of tires, that
Wow.
seeping into the earth, not to mention it was an eyesore, and cleaned it all up, did a, full environmental survey and everything and said it's pristine now. And now we're going to put a beautifully landscaped data center there and create some jobs, but also, and this is also to your point, what do these things do at this size, right? What they are is they're small, like AI, what they're called edge data centers. So they need to be at the edge of the population centers. So inside or just outside a major city or any city. It doesn't have to be major anymore because there's so many of them now. And what those are needed for is they need to be close to the population that is using the data that's going through it because of the latency. They need quick turnaround and so forth. So that's why we need more of these smaller ones located near population centers. So yes, there's still going to be behemoth-sized, Manhattan-sized data centers that are going to be put out in West Texas in the desert out there, or Arizona, Northern Virginia. But they also need to be several more 7-Eleven size ones populated right around Hartford and in between Hartford and New York City, in between Hartford and Boston and Providence and Worcester and, those types of things too, because there's, how many millions of people in New England, for example. And that's where we're focused right now is just New England. And most of our properties right now actually are just in Connecticut. One of the problems we're trying to solve there, actually, let me speak to latency a little bit, just to give everybody a picture of what that means. So who needs this latency? It's not, just because even the big ones with that Meta is building and so forth, we're all in a sense Meta. I mean, every Facebook user is responsible for why Meta needs a massive data center. I mean, they're not doing it for themselves. They're doing it to host all the people, all their users. So when we build these small ones, it's the same thing. About a year and a half ago, I was wearing a Holter monitor, came from Boston Scientific, and they were out of Framingham, Massachusetts, and they were, just measuring my heart rate and rhythm and so forth for a while. And that thing had to respond to a server back in Framingham, within 40 miles of where I live. And whenever there was a palpitation that was out of whack for too long, I would get a call from a nurse checking on me. And that's the kind of thing that cannot transmit. Like if I was okay, but if I was having, say, preliminary a heart attack or something, right? I can't have that transmitting all the way out to a desert site in Arizona and then pinging back for the nurse to call me from Framingham, and back and forth. So that's like a real world example of some of the things. It's not just Facebook, it's not just Amazon, it's medical devices that need latency.
Well, I think the thing that you're explaining, this concept of edge centers, is much more palatable for the public to be like, embrace this idea because there's just a lot of misinformation out there or preconceived ideas. It's like the worst case scenario. So when I hear this, I'm like, oh, wow, this is potentially something that could be welcomed into communities, being like, okay, you're going to take a place that is an issue for us, a junkyard or, unusable commercial space. You're going to clean it up. You're going to put this in. It will generate power to run itself. And there potentially is a byproduct of something for the community. That type of value proposition could really welcome a lot of edge centers into a lot of communities and understanding the latency. So yeah, we need a lot of these centers within a close proximity to where we are rather than relying on just big behemoths. So we're kind of like decentralizing the data center industry, which makes a lot of sense. And in the decentralization, then you're also able to offset that energy draw with these smaller situations. So I think the value proposition is so rich. How is it being communicated to your customers? Who is joining you in this partnership of like launching these data centers, coming in partnership with you? How does that all look and set up for you?
Sure. So some of the biggest or hungriest um, sectors right now are universities. For example, in Connecticut, there's an organization called the Connecticut AI Alliance. That's a membership organization of 16 higher ed institutions plus six nonprofits that are all trying to get their hands on AI data center space for their research. They're obviously doing research. They're starting to outgrow their on-site um, computer rooms, and they need actual data centers. A lot of them are approaching us saying, "How can we do a small one on our campus? That can you help us with that?" And we help arrange the power and get the site built and everything, and can even do GPUs as a service if they needed to. So that's one exciting sector. Another one is surprisingly, or maybe not so surprisingly, the government agencies, for example. I mean, it's not just I mean, almost like every company or every agency is in the tech business now, sort of, because they're all run on tech. I mean, even like the Connecticut Department of Transportation, massive IT spend, and because of all of you can imagine the database that they have to keep active and current and alert and responsive to all the things that they are studying in road closures and just different all kinds of aspects like that. Um, it's pretty fun. Biotech is another one. You can imagine biotech and pharmaceutical companies. They're just exploding and speeding up their research by running their research through AI models to extract, just basically shave years off of research because they can do it faster and get a result faster. So that's another exciting thing that AI and data centers are helping with too. So, so a lot of and then gosh, in Connecticut, Hartford's known as the insurance capital of the world. Insurance companies, banks, those guys, hedge funds, they all have actuarial things going on and banking algorithms and investment algorithms that they need constantly running and market tracking and so forth. So it's you think you're in banking, but you're not. You're in tech.
So the demand is obviously there. What are the challenges from the business operational side working with this demand and rolling out these data centers?
There's no challenges. It's really easy. Um, I'm just kidding.
Yeah. I was like, sure, our audience believes you fully.
The permitting is a big deal. All of you can't do anything without. I mean, let's put it this way: you can slice up a project into 1,000 slices of pie, and every single one of those slices has to get approved and stamped by somebody. So there's a lot of interaction with councils and different bureaucracies and agencies and so forth, and that's fine. Some states have better or a more they make it a little more streamlined and easier and faster than others, for sure. And those will be the states that win because developers like us can go anywhere. We're not gonna we don't have to work somewhere nobody does. It has to work in a state where they're not welcome, where you're going to make it difficult for us. So rather than bang our foreheads on the desk, we're just going to go to the states that are courting us with easier permitting rules and so forth. And it's not to say that I don't want to give the impression that we're not trying to hold up standards or something like that. It's just there's a lot of layers of bureaucracy. I'll just say it that way. And
Yeah, no, my audience would be very familiar because, we're dealing with large scale utility services and solar all across the board. So my audience definitely is familiar with the bureaucracy that needs to happen. Then when it comes to the actual, because these data centers basically we're behind the curve on people wanting to have access to them. So how does that relay into your business being like from the time you identify a piece of property, you make an offer, you purchase it to transforming it into like, okay, we're generating the power for this particular client or partner of us. What does that timeline and strategy look like?
yeah, so we reach out, we get our per properties listed for sale or lease, like any commercial real estate project. And then we have a small army of companies that are good at well networked within the data center and IT space. And they pick up the phone and send emails to their friends and say, "Hey, last time you and I talked, you were looking for more power, more rack space. I found some," that kind of thing. And that's how that looks. And then we will get on screen with them first and then meet them in person. And we kind of give them an overview of the project and what the assets are available. We can then talk to them about what kind of specific requirements they want in the data center, like, tech specific requirements. And our data center builder is the best in the business at that. And he works with them on tailoring and customizing the solution so that they're moving into something that really that they want. No one is going to be settling for whatever we give them. He's going to tailor it so that they feel really good about the decision. And then they get on a rental, either a rental agreement, a capacity agreement, or a power purchase agreement. So in some cases, they own the building, or they own the building and they just buy the power from us. And in some cases, they pay one flat fee for everything: the power plus their rack space, plus the cooling and the security and the capacity and everything like that.
Interesting. And so, in that second thing, they basically own the whole thing. They're a partner with you, but they're more of like a ownership level.
So no, not really. So we don't partner with the tenants, at least we haven't yet. What we typically a better way to describe it is they can own the building on our land that we lease in this one scenario. So it's or one template scenario. We build two pads on a property. And one pad is the power station that we built and we own and we control and operate. And it sells power to the next pad over, which is the data center. We still own the ground. So we'll lease the data center pad for $1 a year. That's a real number, $1 a year. Somebody just has to build their data center on it. They can either hire us to do it because we can build it to suit for them, or they can potentially bring their own builder in and build on the pad. So it's their building, but they buy the power from us and they lease the ground from us as well.
Okay, great. Thank you. That clarifies. So, in your process, what are the major? Well, we kind of talked about challenges like that permitting, but what are some of the bottlenecks that you face in rolling this out?
It's always a mix of getting the timing right for everyone. So some of the challenges are getting the tenant signed up, balancing that with getting the construction financing at the right time to start on time, and then also all the vendor contract, the manufacturing product to get delivered to site on time. So those three pieces all have to, or those are the three balls we're juggling, in a broader sense: tenant sign up, construction closing and financing, and then as well as getting the product ordered and delivered on site, because there's a lot of shortages going around right now because there's such a demand.
When your team reaches out to potential clients, customers for these new sites, what are is the value proposition really easy for them to adapt? They're like, I get this. This is exactly what I'm looking for, and it's more so the concern, which you just mentioned, is like aligning timelines, being like they probably wanted it 6 months ago or 6 weeks ago. They don't want to wait like 6 months to maybe move in, or 3 months, whatever that looks like. But is the value proposition for the client that's really clear, or is there a level of education?
Well, I mean, just off the cuff, I can say there's always education, because every project is nuanced, because different people are coming in. Everybody wants something just a little different, So we always have to, different things and maybe not even want something different, but different things are important to them. So we have to emphasize certain things with them or flesh out certain things with them that the next person over, we might not have to cover it as in depth. So there's definitely always, it's never usually a quick, "Oh, I get it. Okay, let's move in." But I will say, yeah, we have so far we've had a good value proposition, because we like the fact that we work in a high expense state for electricity. Believe it or not, we like that because electricity is very high here. And we can actually because we bring our own power in the way we do our model, we actually are much less expensive than the grid. So it's really kind of nice to be able to say, look, you can come here and look for your own property, and that'll take you a couple of years, maybe, right? And then you can go and permit that site yourself. That'll take 2 years at least. And so now you're at like 4 years. And then you've got to get your vendor quotes and everything lined up and figure out how you're going to do power. And then no, then apply for an interconnection to the grid. That's going to take 3 to 5 years. So you want to come do it yourself. It's going to take 7 years before you open up your data center. We are sitting here with all those approvals already in place. We literally are pad ready. When we open our big fat mouths into the marketplace, we're ready to start building. So they can literally just it's shovel ready and we can start building the power and within 12 months they can move in and start operating. So, I mean, we save them 6 years of waiting, which translates to many, many millions of dollars, right? So, and headaches and all that. So, I mean, and in the end, we giving them a lower power bill. So, you know, you can move in faster with us and pay less. How does that sound to you?
It sounds fantastic, and I'm sure they feel the same way. How does, as we move towards the finish line, looking into the future then, over the next, let's say, 6 to 12 months, what's your strategic priorities for 2026?
We're going to keep permitting. We've got several sites. We've got 27 megawatts permitted already, and we've got teams, already talking to people to fill those up with both co-locate. There, some of those are co-location centers where people can take multi-tenants within one building, and some of them will be a single enterprise. And then we've got more coming online that we're getting approvals for, and which we're excited about, and we're going to keep building. And the fun part is that yeah, every project you complete, you get that feeling of success when you cross the finish line, right, and a happy tenant. But the extra kick for us is that every time we do a project and get it running, we get to start growing food and giving it away, which
Hmm.
is really fun. And we're excited to really build on that too, with especially with the partnerships that we have with the universities and even just with the towns as well, because we can start to do some really innovative things like run their students, high school and college, through the data centers and the energy plant so that they can learn about the latest technologies, because we're using cutting edge stuff. This is they're going to be learning about what's the vanguard of data center technology and on-site energy technology, emissions control, and carbon reduction, and all those things that young people are fascinated by. And then also there'll be a crew that is interested in agriculture, right? And we'll run them through the hydroponic farms, and they can spend some shifts in there. We'll set up some college, and high school courses where the kids can get credits for spending some time in there. And not only do they learn about agriculture, but they'll learn about the nonprofit aspect of it too, and nonprofit management and so forth. So we're going to really give the young people in the community some exposure to learning, not in these living labs that we're creating.
Brian, I absolutely love the vision and the passion that you have. This is one of the best ideas I've heard in a while. So I'm super excited for what you guys are up to at Renew Developers, and I hope you have an amazing 2026 and beyond. For my audience members that might want to reach out to you, connect in person, maybe they're interested in becoming one of your future customers or getting involved somehow, or maybe even wanting to promote you in another. How do people find you and get a hold of you?
Sure. One easy way is find me on LinkedIn, Brian Carmody, Renew Developers. If you search under those two terms, you should find there's multiple Brian Carmodys, but if you look for the Renew Developers one, his face, you can see it in the profile picture. Please reach out to me that way. I'd love to connect with you. You can also try just sending me an email, but at brian.carmody@renewdevelopers.com, and we'll start from there. You try that.
That sounds great. And of course, to my audience, we will put those details in the show notes so you can easily reach out to Brian. And if you've liked and enjoyed this episode, make sure to like and subscribe, share it with somebody in the industry. Brian, any final words as we close up the episode for today?
Gosh, Kreel, just thank you for this really fun conversation, giving us some exposure. That's, one of our biggest challenge is actually going back to one of your last questions is just the exposure, because every time we talk to somebody, we get the reaction that you just gave me. What an awesome idea. This is so fun. I'm so excited. And we just want to keep talking to people and letting them know that we want people on board with us, come join the mission. So thank you.
Yeah, you're very welcome. And to my audience, let's help Brian out, get the word out there. So spread the message forward. I want to thank you once again for another episode of Blue Ocean Solutions podcast. Brian, thank you so much for being here, and we'll see you on the next one.